February 1st will, of course, be an amazing fight as David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, takes on the Cuban crusher, David Morrell. And in the co-main event, the rematch between Brandon Figueroa, the newly elevated WBC featherweight world champion, takes on the former unified super bantamweight world champion, Stephen Fulton. And of course, there are some other fights on the card. The return of Pitbull after his loss to Rayo. Ramos versus Rosario. Very good fights. Unfortunately, I do believe they're a lot more one-sided. So we'll unfortunately not talk about them. Very good fights, but probably one-sided. But besides that, Stephen Fulton, of course, is 22-1, 8 wins by way of knockout, and 1 loss by way of knockout. Of course, that 1 loss was against Naoya Inoue back in 2023. He lost 8th round stoppage. But, I mean, it's Naoya Inoue. No one can really blame him. He's undisputed there now, so not that bad of a loss. But besides that, he has had a very nice run, beating the former undefeated Isak Abelar, former undefeated Arnold Kegai, the WBO Super Bantamweight World Champion, Angelo Leo, also undefeated at the time, which that win is aging very nicely, as Leo has now moved up to featherweight and defeated Luis Lopez for the IBF Featherweight World Championship. So, of course, if Fulton manages to get past Figueroa, a rematch against Leo could be very much next. Of course, Brandon Figueroa, which of course we'll talk about later, and Daniel Roman. But of course, after losing to Inoue, he moved up and fought Carlos Castro for a split decision win where he was dropped in the 5th round. Very interesting. We will talk about that later because Castro is a common opponent between the two. Of course, Brandon Figueroa, the Heartbreaker, 25-1 and 119 wins by way of knockout. Of course, his one draw was against Julio Ceja, which I don't know if he's actually a WBA champion or is he just a secondary title holder. But besides that, the one thing we do know is that he's the fully elevated, the WBC Super Bantamweight World Champion, as he defeated Luis Neri by 7th round stoppage. Then, of course, he tried to unify with Fulton, which he unfortunately did not come out victorious. We'll talk about that later, of course. He then moved up and fought Carlos Castro, where he stopped him in the 6th round. Fought the former featherweight world champion, Mark Magsayo. He fought the former Super Bantamweight World Champion, Jesse Magdaleno. Now, of course, besides that, records very similar, Figueroa seems to have the better wins at featherweight, Fulton at Super Bantamweight. Of course, the common opponent being Castro. Figueroa stopped Castro. Fulton seemed to have struggled. I thought he won clearly, but it seemed on the judges' scorecard, it seemed he was struggling. But besides that, context matters. Figueroa took less time off to fight Castro compared to Fulton. Of course, Fulton was also stopped, so that probably played a factor. And also, Fulton doesn't have power, so you can't really blame him for not stopping Castro, but whatever. But besides that, this rematch will, of course, be very close as well. It's going to be close, don't get me wrong. People are saying, but Fulton, he got stopped. He hasn't fought in a long time. Don't get me wrong, but since they already fought each other, they already know each other's weaknesses for the most part, so it's still going to be close. I mean, literally look at, the former champion taking on Jaya Bataya years later, and then he still went decision with him. Safe to assume this could be the same thing. But of course, the one I do believe will take the win is Figueroa, of course, mostly because he has the better wins at featherweight. Also because the fact that he's also been there for longer. But also because I do believe he fits into featherweight a lot more nicely than Fulton. Not saying Fulton is slowing down anytime soon, but I feel like Figueroa would land harder shots than before. Seemed to look a lot more pressure, right? Because Figueroa is known for his suffocating pressure. Fulton's known more for his, counters. Overall slickness. I mean, not that slick. I mean, literally in both fights I saw, he didn't look the most slick, right? But besides that, he can punch. Figueroa does not have a lot of defense, so Fulton was landing his best shots in the fight. Same thing's going to happen here, but I think Figueroa does I think the move to featherweight benefits Figueroa a little bit more than Fulton. That's why I'm picking Figueroa to win. But it is a close fight. Fulton can pull it off. I mean, he did it one time. He could do it again. I don't believe it's going to happen, though. But besides that, I have Figueroa defending his email championship and maybe fighting Ray Vargas in the future. Or Leo or Ball or Espinoza. You never know. But besides that, the main event of the evening, David Benavidez versus David Morrell. Now, of course, Benavidez is looking to show the world that his nickname is not just for show, and that people should rightfully be afraid of facing the monster. And of course, Morrell is looking to show the world that even with 1/3 of the professional fights as David Benavidez, he will make this monster look human. Now, of course, a lot is on the line, both putting their undefeated records and next title shot. They don't have to fight each other. They could have waited for their individual title shots, but no, they decided we're going to fight each other. Winner is next up to fight for the undisputed titles that are now being fought for by Beterbiev and Bivol in their rematch. Now, of course, the Cuban Crusher, the nickname I've given him, why not? Mexican Monster, MM, Cuban Crusher, CC, makes sense. David Morrell, 11-0, 9 wins by way of knockout. Of course, he is the former interim WBA super middleweight world champion. Of course, we'll talk about that later. And the now current interim WBA champion, which they are claiming he's a 2-division world champion. But it's PBC, they have to do it, which is weird because I think people forgot because they had to call Ryan Garcia a champion when he fought Tank because they couldn't call Tank a 3-division world champion and not call Ryan Garcia an actual champion. So it's always interesting. But besides that, Morrell has had great fights in super middleweight and has also fought a top guy in light heavyweight. Of course, his best wins are against Lennox Allen, Mario Abel Cazares, Alantez Fox, Eidos, Falcao, Ajbeko, and Hot Rod. Very nice win. Of course, he did not look the best in his light heavyweight debut, but same could be said about David Benavidez. Now, of course, David Benavidez, El Monstro, the Mexican Monster, the Bandera Roja, whichever nickname you want to choose. 29-0, 24 wins by way of knockout. He is the former 2-time WBC champion of the world and the now current interim WBC light heavyweight world champion as he defeated the Nail for that interim title. Now, of course, his records has been heavily criticized for a while now. Not recently, because it seems like he has stepped up in competition recently. Of course, his best wins are against the former champion Anthony Durrell, Ronald Ellis, Kyron Davis, Caleb Plant, the former super middleweight world champion, Demetrius Andrade, the former 2-division world champion, and of course the Nail, the former light heavyweight world champion. In terms of resume at super middleweight, David Benavidez is the superior, has the superior resume to Morrell, but Morrell is not that far off. He has not fought a champion at super middleweight, to my knowledge, but he has fought top and tough opposition. In light heavyweight, both only have one fight. Benavidez fought a former world champion, although much older, while Morrell fought a former title challenger, although much younger. Both were criticized for their debuts. Benavidez looked like he did not have the power he had at super middleweight, but at the same time, the Nail is as tough as, well, nails. That's why they call him the Nail. Actually, I don't think that's why they call him the Nail, but they call him, he's tough. That's about it. Morrell fought Hot Rod, who still somewhat young in his career. Not to mention, Hot Rod is helping Morrell in his fight. That's right, he's sparring with Morrell. Goddamn, David Benavidez has to step up his game. Hot Rod and Morrell, pretty good duo. But besides that, Benavidez looked like he did not have the power, and it looked like he gassed out to some degree in the second half. Looked like he tried to put away the Nail, or try to hammer the Nail in, but unfortunately couldn't, so it looked like he tired himself out. Same thing can be said about Morrell. Morrell did not look like nearly the same fighter as he did at super middleweight, but then again, Hot Rod did a very good job of pretty much nullifying all the best traits of Morrell, which unfortunately, I'm going to say it right here, Benavidez will not. Now, of course, this is seen as a 50-50 fight because Morrell is a very talented fighter, very light on his feet, great combination, amazing reflexes, good defensive prowess. And David Benavidez is known as a literal walking tank. He will walk forward and forward and forward. You can hit him with your best shots. For most times, it does not affect him, and he will come and he will batter you to the body. He's a great body puncher. But it is a 50-50 fight because, as the title, hopefully I named it that, they are tailor-made for each other. Of course, Morrell is a mover, which of course takes energy. Benavidez likes to cut distance. He's very good at that too. And he could tire out Morrell very early and stop him late. But Morrell, with his light feet, his great defense and power, he could use Benavidez' forward momentum against them, like a matador. Bring him in, hit him with a shot, check left hook, drop him. You never know. Now, of course, they are roughly around the same height, but Benavidez looks like twice his size. I don't even know what the hell Benavidez is like. His bones must be like made out of steel or something, because when they did that face-off, Benavidez looked like a heavyweight. Nothing more to it. He looked like a heavyweight. But of course, although Benavidez did somewhat struggle in terms of his gas tank, which probably was in case of something I will say, Benavidez started a lot earlier than he usually does at super middleweight. I think due to a less weight cut, he gets to keep more of his energy. And he started a lot earlier against the nail than he normally would at super middleweight. Of course, David Morrell is a great fighter in terms of IQ, power, and that's very important because when Benavidez fought Plant was doing amazing against Benavidez, but without the power, Benavidez really just kept moving forward until Plant gassed out. Unfortunately, Benavidez can't do that against Morrell. Morrell has too much power. He will hurt Benavidez. So here's the thing. This is really a 50-50 fight. Literally is. Both of them can really much counter each other perfectly. Of course, Benavidez can just look like he's fighting ghosts out there against Morrell. And Morrell can look like a literal middleweight compared to Benavidez, where Benavidez just straight up just stops them. But unfortunately, the winner will, of course, be the one who implements his game plan first. Because after that, I don't think the other one can really change the momentum. Both have power, don't get me wrong. But once one of them starts going, I don't think the other one can really do anything about it. I think both of them are like, oh, damn. Well, guess I lost. But besides that, the one I do think ends up being the first one to implement his game plan, it's going to be Morrell. I'll be real with you. I think Morrell overall has the better ability. Now, don't get me wrong. Both of them are going to absolutely get better after their first fight. When you look that, I guess you could say, sluggish or bad, there's really nothing more to do except get better. That's what they're going to do. They saw their mistakes. They're going to be like, okay, I shouldn't do that. I should do this instead. And they're going to learn. But besides that, I think Morrell overall has the better skill set over Benavidez. But Benavidez, dude, this dude's huge. I don't know what to say. This dude is a tank, like literally. Benavidez, I'll just have to see how Benavidez holds up to Morrell's power, because I think Morrell will land the bigger shots first. But besides that, I think I have Morrell winning by decision. I think Morrell will manage to land his bigger shots first, and end up setting up traps, you know, how Morrell is. I feel like he ends up getting into his groove first before Benavidez. And I think he ends up taking a unanimous decision win over David Benavidez. Now, of course, I don't know. I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable picking a winner so quickly, because Benavidez, we see him fight, you really just think, damn, this man has like no weaknesses. He kind of does, but you know what I mean. But give me Morrell by decision. I do think he implements his game plan first over Benavidez. And Benavidez plays a game of catch-up. And I don't think he does catch up. But besides that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.